they've been talking about re-releasing a lot of songs from the 50s. Do you know if they're going to be re-releasing any of yours?
They haven't notified us yet, but I hope they do. They're beautiful.
I mean, people in the audience would sometimes complain and get up and leave. There was a few times where the club owner wouldn't even pay us.
You will never look at the Platters the same again after hearing this crazy story. As a fan, you're probably asking, why?
Tony was at his height from 1955 to 1960. And you hadn't really heard too much music from Tony in the 1960s.
Well, to begin with, the 4 male members of the group were involved in a huge scandal. They were arrested in Cincinnati for helping and supporting prostitution. After that, everything started to fall apart. The scandal caused a lot of problems within the group. Some key members left, and the group slowly broke down.
And then when they really put the group back together in the early 70s, his voice was already gone by then.
But it got even worse when different groups started using the Platters name, which left fans confused. The Platters never recovered from all this drama. Let's take a closer look. The Platters started in Los Angeles in 1951. At first, they were just a group of teenagers who loved to sing. The group had Alex Hodge, his brother Gaynell Hodge, Curtis Williams, Joe Jefferson, and Cornell Gunter. A man named Ralph Bass worked with them. He helped them make music. He later changed the group. He took out Cornell Gunter and brought in Tony Williams. Herb Reed joined the group in 1953 after leaving the Army.
Over the years, many of the players have changed, but one name has been constant. One of the founding members of the Platters, Herb Reed, joined.
The group still needed a name. One day, while they were sitting at the kitchen table, Mrs. Hodge put cookies and some records on the table. She said the records looked like Platters. Herb Reed said, "Let's call the group the Platters." And that's how the name was born.
The one who named the Platters?
Yes,
the Platters?
I am.
Because why? Why the Platters?
Because the disc jockeys used to refer to records as being Platters. So we were all individual singers. So I said, well, he's a Platter, I'm a Platter, she's a Platter, and that's why I came up with the name the Platters.
In June 1953, Gunter left and joined another group called the Flares. Tony Williams became the lead singer. The Platters made 2 songs with Federal Records, but the songs didn't do well. So Ralph Bass asked his friend Buck Ram to help. Buck Ram was smart and knew music. He brought in a woman singer named Zola Taylor. He also replaced Alex Hodge with Paul Roby in late 1954.
When we went to see Buck Ram for the first time, he suggested, we'd have to have something like in the way of like a showcase, to showcase ourselves or a gimmick or something. And he suggested a girl. And I'd heard Zola singing with a girls group.
Buck Ram helped the group record more songs, but the record company didn't think they were good enough. One of the songs was Only You, written by Buck Ram. The label didn't want to release it, but it still became popular later.
The Platters. Did you have any idea in 1955 that you were going to have that long list of hits?
No. Never.
Never. Well,
On August 10th, 1959, something bad happened to the group. 4 members of the group, Herb Reed, Tony Williams, Paul Roby, and David Lynch, were in Cincinnati, Ohio. That night, the police raided their hotel room. Inside the room, they found 3 young white women and 1 black woman. All the women were 19 years old and had no clothes on. The police believed the group was involved in something illegal. They arrested the 4 men and said they were helping with prostitution and other bad acts. News about the arrest spread fast. The public was shocked. Many people were upset and started to look at the group in a different way. Even though the group said they did nothing wrong, people started to turn their backs on them. Radio stations across the country stopped playing their music. Fans who once loved them became unsure. The group's clean image was gone. During the court case, their lawyer said they had already lost over $500,000 in canceled shows and bookings. That was a huge amount of money in 1959. The case lasted for 4 months. Finally, on December 10, 1959, the court found all 4 members not guilty. But even though they won in court, they still lost in the eyes of the public. This scandal created a big problem inside the group. Trust started to break down. Some members blamed each other. Others felt that the damage to their name would never go away. They had worked hard for their success, but in just one night, everything changed. The scandal followed them for many years. People remembered the arrest more than their music for a long time. The group never fully recovered from it.
You had, I don't know how many million sellers. Does anybody actually know how many there were?
No, the record company doesn't even know.
After the scandal that hit the group, things started to fall apart from the inside. There were many arguments between the members and the people managing them. The group was no longer united like before. Zola Taylor, who was the only woman in the group. But even before that, in late 1959, Tony Williams, who sang lead on most of their biggest hits, also left the group. He wanted to try a solo career. These 2 people leaving made a big change in the group. It changed how they sounded and how people saw them.
Tony was at his height from 1955 to 1960. And you hadn't really heard too much music from Tony in the 1960s.
In 1960, Tony Williams was replaced by Sonny Turner. He had a different voice and style. The record label, Mercury, was not happy about this. They didn't want to release any new music from the Platters unless Williams was still the lead singer. This made the manager, Buck Ram, angry. They ended up in a big legal fight. Because of this, Mercury stopped releasing new songs with the new members. Instead, they spent the next 2 years just releasing old songs that still had Tony Williams on them. When the contract finally ended, it left the group in a very weak place. Things got even worse in the following years. Zola Taylor left for good. She was replaced many times, first by Beverly Hanson Harris, then Barbara Randolph, and finally by Sandra Dawn. That same year, another original member, Paul Roby, also left. He was replaced by Nate Nelson, who had been the lead singer of another group called the Flamingos. In 1967, a singer named Bob White joined the group and stayed until 1971. The group was changing faces all the time, and fans were getting confused.
I mean, people in the audience would sometimes complain and get up and leave. There was a few times where the club owner wouldn't even pay us.
As more members left, more fights broke out. People argued over who had the right to use the name The Platters. There were court orders, agreements that stopped people from joining other groups, and even different groups using the same name at the same time. It became a big mess. Some former members, Tony Williams, Paul Roby, and Zola Taylor, each started their own groups. For a short time, Taylor, Roby, and another original member, David Lynch, even joined together to form a group called the Original Platters. They used a singer named Johnny Barnes who sounded a lot like Tony Williams. To try and keep his group separate from all the others, Buck Ram added his own name. His group was called the Buck Ram Platters. He signed them to a new label called Musicor Records. In 1966 and 1967, they had a few hit songs again like I Love You 1,000 Times. With This Ring.
With this ring, I promise I'll always love you all.
And Washed Ashore.
Washed ashore, yeah, girl, all alone.
Sonny Turner was the lead singer on these songs. Other members included Reed, Lynch, Nelson, and Sandra Dawn. But even this group didn't stay the same for long. Nate Nelson left in 1967. Sandra Dawn left in 1969 and was replaced by Regina Coco, who stayed with the group until 1983. In 1969, Herb Reed, who was the last original member still in the group, also left. He started his own group called Herb Reed and Sweet River. That group didn't last long, so he later used the name Herb Reed and the Platters. Nate Nelson even joined Reed's group before dying from a heart attack in 1984. After Reed left, Buck Ram continued promoting his version of the Platters, even though he didn't have the original members anymore. Sonny Turner left in 1970 and was replaced by Monroe Powell. Powell stayed with the group until 1995, but during those years, many other people came and went. In 1971, Tony Williams created his own version of the Platters and went on a world tour.
And then when they really put the group back together in the early 70s, his voice was already gone by then.
In 1995, Powell had a disagreement with Gene Bennett, who had taken over the business side of the group from Buck Ram. They went separate ways. At that point, only one person, Ken Johnson, was left with Powell. They kept touring as the Platters. Meanwhile, Gene Bennett hired 5 new singers to form her own group, called the Buck Ram Platters. Both Bennett and Ram said they owned the rights to the name The Platters. But later, it was decided that neither of them actually had the legal right to the name. This made things even more confusing. A big court case happened in 1976 called 5 Platters, Inc. v. Purdy. This case was about who really owned the name The Platters. A group called 5 Platters, Inc. said they owned the name, and that other people were using it without permission. They said Bernard Purdy and others had performed using the name The Platters, and that this was unfair and confusing to fans. The court agreed with 5 Platters, Inc., and said the other group had broken the law. The group had spent around $250,000 to protect their rights to the name. They had also registered the name as a service mark, which means they had legal papers showing it belonged to them. The court said that people were being misled. Fans were going to shows thinking they were seeing the original Platters when they were not. The court said this was wrong and unfair. The court gave a small money award to the real owners and also gave them the right to stop others from using the name. The case had many twists, including efforts by the other side to cancel the official registration of the name. But in the end, the jury found that the fake Platters caused confusion and hurt the original group's name. Some of the people being sued were even let go during the case, but the main issue remained. The name had been misused. All of this fighting hurt the group's image. Instead of being remembered only for their music, the Platters became known for their court battles and broken friendships. What was once a strong and beautiful group, full of talent, turned into a group filled with arguments, legal problems, and too many versions of the same name.
They've been talking about re-releasing a lot of songs from the 50s. Do you know if they're going to be re-releasing any of yours?
They haven't notified us yet, but I hope they do. They're beautiful.
There were many groups that called themselves the Platters. Some of them included Sonny Turner's group, Zola Taylor's group, Richie Jones's group, and Milton Bullock's group. Others included Paul Roby's group, managed by his widow, and Gene Bennett's Buck Ram Platters. Monroe Powell and Herb Reed also had their own versions. Some of these groups had 1 or 2 old members. Others had no connection to the original Platters at all. Fans didn't know who was who. Monroe Powell, who used to tour using the Platters name, got into legal trouble. Gene Bennett, who worked closely with the original manager, Buck Ram, said Powell broke his contract. She sued him. Later, they made a deal. Powell could still tour, but he had to use the name The Platters, featuring Monroe Powell. This made it clear he wasn't the original group, just someone who had been a part of it. In 1994, Gene Bennett used the Platters name without permission for a show at the Sahara Casino in Las Vegas. That show ran for 15 years, even though it started with a lie. She didn't own the full rights to the name, but still used it to sell tickets. This added to the confusion about who really owned the name. Paul Roby, one of the original members, went to court before he died in 1989. He had cancer, but he still fought hard in court. He won the right to use the Platters name and got some money too. But after he died, His widow lost those rights. In 1997, the court said she had to destroy all posters and materials using the Platters name. Then the court gave Herb Reed the right to use the name. In 1999, 2002, and 2004, courts ruled again. This time, the rights went to the 5 Platters, Incorporated. The court said they had the common law right to the name. This means they had used it for a long time, so they had some ownership. In 2002, Herb Reed lost his trademark rights, and the name went back to the company. Even though Reed lost some rights in 2002, he kept fighting. He was the last living original member. He took many people to court. He sued promoters who let fake groups use the Platters name. In 2006, a court gave him back the full right to use the name The Platters. This was a big win for him after many years of legal battles. Reed also filed a lawsuit against a promoter in Florida. He said this promoter allowed other groups to use the Platters name without asking for permission. The promoter had let many groups perform using the name, even though they were not part of the real group. Reed said the promoter never got the rights legally. The court was asked to stop the promoter and make them pay money for using the name the wrong way. These legal fights hurt the group's name and success. So many versions of the Platters were performing that fans didn't know which one was real. This made it hard for any one group to do well. People stopped buying tickets or records because they didn't know who they were listening to. The fights also made the group look bad in the media. Money was lost. Careers were held back. The group couldn't tour or record new music easily. The legal problems kept them stuck. The fights became more talked about than the music. People forgot the great songs and only remembered the court battles. In the end, the legal problems made the group weaker. What should have been a proud legacy turned into years of courtroom drama. Instead of celebrating the music, people were watching old friends and new faces fight over a name. And even now, many fans still wonder, which Platters group was the real one?
How can you argue with success? How can you argue with a song that's one of the biggest songs in the world at that time? How can you argue with that?
Right.
Another of the biggest problems was about who owned the songs and who deserved credit for writing them. A big fight happened over a song called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. This song was not written by the Platters. It was an old song from the 1930s, written by Jerome Kern. The Platters made their own version, giving it a rock and roll style. Some people loved this new version, and it became a hit in the United States and the United Kingdom. But not everyone was happy. Jerome Kern had already passed away, and his widow didn't like what the Platters did to the song. She said the song was meant to be soft and serious, not turned into a pop song. She was upset and spoke out against it. Still, the new version stayed popular, and the group earned a lot of money from it. This started debates about who had the right to change a song and who should get paid when it becomes a hit again. Disagreements about music credit didn't stop there. Inside the group and with others around them, more people started to argue about who wrote what songs and who should receive the money from them. Some people claimed they helped with lyrics or ideas but didn't get mentioned. Others said they were promised money but didn't receive any. These kinds of fights caused tension in the group and with managers and producers. Music brought them fame, but it also brought problems. Another major issue the group faced was about race. The Platters were a black group that became popular with white audiences. This was rare during that time. Most black artists stayed in black music circles, and most white people didn't listen to them. But the Platters broke that barrier. They were invited to TV shows, concerts, and radio programs that usually only played white artists. This gave them great chances, but it also brought problems. Some people in the industry didn't like seeing a black group doing so well. There were times when the group was treated unfairly because of their skin color. At some concerts, they were told to use a back door or stay in separate hotels. Even though their music was loved, they were not always welcomed as equals. This made their journey harder. Still, they kept going and tried to focus on their music. Things got worse when some members were linked to scandals. The public started to lose trust in them. Even though not everything said about them was true, it still hurt their name. They tried to fix this by making more music and doing more shows. They wanted people to remember them for their songs, not for the problems. But it was hard. The legal fights, money issues, and bad press made it tough for them to climb back to the top. Over time, the group changed members. Some of the original singers left, and new ones came in. But the old problems stayed. People still argued about who owned the rights to their biggest songs. Old members said they deserved more money. Managers and record companies said they already got paid. These fights went on for years. Lawyers got involved, and the truth became harder to find. But the story of the Platters is not just about music. It is also a story of fights, unfair treatment, and struggles over rights and money. Their success showed how far talent could go, but their problems showed how fame and money can cause deep pain. Many artists today still face the same fights over music credit, ownership, and fair treatment. The Platters story helps us understand why those fights matter.
Remember, Tony was at his height from 1955 to 1960. And you hadn't really heard too much music from Tony in the 1960s.
So, we've talked a little about Tony before, but from 1982 to 1992, Tony Williams was still on the road, still calling the shots as lead singer of his version of the Platters, even though his glory days were decades behind him. His once legendary voice had thinned out, worn down by years of chain-smoking those elegant little cigars, heavy drinking, asthma, and even a stroke. But he kept going, clinging to the stage like it was the only place he still felt alive. He wasn't doing it alone. His wife Helen was part of the group, running things from behind the scenes and singing on stage. The newer members could still carry the signature harmonies, and one of them, a young second tenor, had real star power. Audiences assumed he was Tony's son because the age gap was obvious, but Tony didn't correct them. He'd stand off to the side, let the kid take the spotlight, and smile like a proud father. It wasn't about ego anymore. It was about keeping the name alive.
Would ask me if I was like Tony Williams' son or something because I was too young to actually be a original member of the group. Tony would call me his prodigy, like.
But what fans didn't see was how hard it really was. Tony's health kept breaking down. Sometimes, right after a tour, he'd be rushed straight to the hospital. There were nights where he simply couldn't sing. Nights the audience walked out disappointed. Nights club owners refused to pay them. But Helen would push to keep things moving. The group still brought in money. Tony's name still meant something, and that meant the show couldn't stop. He was tired, though. More tired than anyone really knew. He needed rest, time to recover, someone to say, "That's enough." But instead, he was treated like a brand, a product. Even when the body couldn't keep up, Tony was sent back on stage. Eventually, it all caught up to him. One night, he went to bed like usual. The next morning, he was gone. Some people close to him weren't surprised. It was heartbreaking, but they saw it coming. Tony didn't need to go out like that. The voice, that once silky, soaring voice, was still buried in there somewhere. But it had been drowned by years of damage and exhaustion. What he needed was protection. What he got was another gig. In the end, the man who was the Platters, the man who built the brand, the sound, the legacy, sang himself into silence. And when that voice stopped, it took the last bit of magic with it.